Today we're going to be talking all about fire scale and fire stain, how to prevent it, and if you've got it, how do you get rid of it? My name's Andrew Berry and welcome to At the Bench's YouTube channel. So fire scale really just refers to a scale that appears on the surface, and it refers to the deep oxide staining that results from the oxidizations of silver that often occurs during annealing. We're going to be playing around with this little bit of silver today, and we're going to be showing you methods to prevent fire scale and fire stain, and also once you've got it, how we're going to remove it. Now, fire scale and fire stain occur because of the oxygen that is within the flame. Now, if you have these little handheld torches like these here, you can't alter the amount of oxygen in the flame because they're sort of preset. All it is butane, and when you push the button, the butane comes out, the oxygen is drawn in through the little holes here on the nozzle, and that is the flame that results. You can sometimes adjust them to make a bit more of a neutral flame like this, so there literally is no oxygen going into that flame now, but that really isn't going to help us heat up a piece of silver, whether it comes to annealing or whether it actually comes to soldering. So we do need a level of oxygen going into the flame. If you had a propane tank, got one by here, with a nozzle, this is a sievert torch, exactly the same thing with this. It's a one gas nozzle, the propane comes in, it mixes with the oxygen around these holes here, and the flame comes out that's already pre-mixed with oxygen. You can't alter these flames. Now, if you had a Smith's little torch, you can adjust the amount of oxygen that goes into the flame. Smith's little torch is as an example, it has propane and oxygen being piped into the torch. What you don't want is to have an oxidizing flame. An oxidizing flame means there's just too much oxygen going into the mixture. The more oxygen you have on that flame, the shorter the little blue part of the flame gets, and the hissier and the roaring sound just comes from it because there's just far too much oxygen. You use that on your piece of silver and there's so much oxygen being forced out of that flame that the surface of the silver and the silver absorbs that oxygen, and it's the oxidization that takes place from that oxygen being forced onto the surface and the copper within the silver that causes these oxides. Now, we're going to be using sterling silver. We have 925 parts of silver, 75 parts of copper, and it's the copper that is the problem. If you're using fine silver, there should be no copper in that at all because it's pure and the oxygen will not react with the silver. And it won't react with the copper, it's not even present in the silver. So if you're using fine silver, you shouldn't get any fire scale or fire stain. So the best way not to have fire scale or fire stain is to prevent the oxygen actually reaching the surface. Now, when you come to anneal, you really should anneal with a bit of a bushier flame so you don't have an awful lot of oxygen being forced onto the silver itself. And also there are various ways that we can prevent it. The easiest way to prevent fire scale and fire stain is to, as I said, limit the amount of oxygen reaching the metal and also the time taken. You have a piece of silver and you're there heating it up, heating it out. Even with an oxidizing flame, the oxygen is still present, and the longer that oxygen is still present on that silver, the more that silver is going to suck that oxygen into the silver and produce usually fire scale. Or is it fire stain? Fire stain and fire scale. So the one way we can prevent it is to use a torch that gets the job done quick. So you're not there playing the torch on that piece for a long time. So get it over and done with quick. When you're soldering, get your soldering over and done quick. When you're annealing, get your annealing over and done quick. Don't do it in a bright room like this when you're annealing. Lower the lights, a dark area where you can see the color. Don't overheat the silver. Take it up to a very, very dull red, very dull. You hardly really ever want to see a color. Bright lights like this, it masks the color. The piece is normally too bright when you just see a faint glow. So turn the lights off, quiet corner, gentle with the annealing. So there's two easy ways. Get the job done quick, big torch, get the job done fast. The other way then is to stop the oxygen from actually reaching the surface. There are several ways that you can do that, and that is usually with a flux. A flux is great to aid solder flowing. It keeps that joint nice and clean. It stops any oxides appearing on your solder joint. Well, you can use that same flux to coat the whole piece of silver, and the whole piece of silver will be protected from the flame. It'll still get the heat from the flame, but the oxygen will not be allowed to touch the surface of the silver. So if there's no oxygen touching the surface of the silver, the oxides will not form. The oxygen will not get through to the copper. So we can use something like borax. We could get our borax cone, mix up a nice paste, and paste that onto our piece of silver. Nothing wrong with that. That is a brilliant method of doing it. What I would do is put that over the surface of the metal. I would gently warm the metal up just to allow the water to evaporate. Then you'll see any areas that the borax hasn't covered. Recoat it. Let me just quickly show you what I mean. So we get some borax. I'm just going to coat half of this at the moment. You can see at the moment it really isn't clean. There's oils on the surface and it is not allowing the flux to flow over the whole surface. So if you don't want to warm it up and put it into the acid, just gently warm it up with your flame. Warm it up until the water just evaporates, and then you should be able to see where the flux is. Come along with your borax, paint it over a little bit more, as you can see, warm that up, and when the water's evaporated, you can see how the flux is bubbling up. We get a bit better coverage. Paint it over again in those areas that are clear and there's no flux. A bit more on there, warm it up. Okay, so we got a nice coverage of flux over that surface. That's exactly what we're after. Another product that I quite like is something called Magic Boric. This is a soldering dip, very much like flux in the way, borax, in the way it acts as a flux. But what I would do with this is put it into a jam jar or a container and mix it up a little bit when you get it, because there's crystals in it, there's a solution in it that does actually drop down and solidify. So what I would do is spin that round, get that nicely mixed, get your piece of silver, warm up the silver and dunk it into I'll do the other half for this. So we'll warm this up ever so gently, and then I'll dip it into the solution. Bring it out and warm it up. And again, exactly the same way as what we just did with the borax. You can see how we get a bit of a nice even coverage on that. Dip it back in, and then again, warm that up again. And what you want to do is to get, again, a nice even coverage of this Magic Boric covering the whole surface. And once it is covered, you know that then that surface is nicely protected. And there are other fluxes that you could use. The same method as the borax, by heating it, painting the flux on, warming it up, and waiting for that water to evaporate. Okay, so those are the best ways to prevent any build-up of firescale. I wouldn't really worry about doing this if you're just annealing the piece, because annealing really just produces a very, very light scale that once you put into your acid or your safety pickle, the acid and safety pickle will remove that little bit of copper on the surface, which would be totally fine. The longer that you put the flame on the piece, the more oxygen that gets to the piece, the thicker the scale will be and the harder it will be to remove. So let me turn that over. Let me heat this piece. I'll keep heating this piece and see if we can get a good layer of scale all over this. So also the positioning of the flame really helps as well. If you've got the tip of the flame here that is right onto the metal, that's the part, the hottest part where the most oxygen is. Again, that will put a lot of oxygen onto the surface. Bring the flame back, so the tip of the flame here is where the most oxygen is, but you use this area down here where there's less oxygen, and this is the reason why we use a bit of a bushier flame, because there's less oxygen in it. You then won't get as much oxides on the surface. So this is what you must not do. You must not really have unprotected silver and keep heating it and heating it and heating it and heating it. Oh, but then what will happen is that perhaps you keep heating like this. You won't know what's happening under the surface, but the oxides are going deeper and deeper into the metal. So you quench the bit of metal in the acid, your safety pickle. It comes out and you think, oh my gosh, what a lovely bit of silver. There's no oxides on it. But what has happened is that acid has just taken a very thin layer of copper off that surface, and what you've got is a very, very thin layer of pure silver, fine silver. And you think, perfect, I got no fire scale at all on this, or firestain in this case, because the firestain goes deeper. But then as you start to polish it, the surface will be polished away, and you then will see the grey, cloudy, dark, purpley sort of clouds that is on the surface, that is underneath the fine silver. So that's pretty much heated up longer, and hopefully now we've got a bit of fire stain on this bit of silver. You can see the color, you can see where it's turned nicely grey in places, and that now is a bit of fire scale on the surface. But if you put that into the acid, the top layer will be stripped, you've got some fine silver, but underneath that layer you then have the fire stain. And we're just going to wait for that to cool now, and whilst it's cooling we're going to talk all about the best way to remove fire stain. Several ways of doing it. You can use an acid, preferably nitric acid, around about a 50% solution nitric acid, and water, very dangerous. It will literally strip the silver. You must make sure if you use that particular method that you protect your solder joints, because the acid knows no difference. It just sees metal going in, it'll take it off, it'll remove it, it'll strip the layer from the whole piece. Have any solder joints on it, protect those solder joints, usually with a bit of wax. Just melt a little bit of wax over the joints itself. That will stop the joints being attacked by the nitric acid. Leave it in there for a few seconds, remove it, a few more seconds, putting it back in until the acid has stripped the silver. Not just a very thin layer, but a reasonable layer, and that will get rid of all the fire stain. Don't want to do that? The other way we can do that is by basically polishing the piece. We physically have to use some elbow grease, and we physically have to remove it. We can do that by using wet and dry paper. We can do that by using buff sticks. You can use these little Scotch Brite wheels like these here. You can use 3M wheels. You can use anything that is going to physically abrade and remove the surface. Then you would go on to use a Tripoli, a pre-polish, like this one here, like this, to again polish up the surface, and then you would go on to then a rouge mop. What you sometimes will find is that when you get through to that rouge mop and you polish it and you think, oh my gosh, this surface is actually gorgeous, and you just catch a light just onto the piece, you will sometimes see a few little grey, purpley little clouds on the surface. Well, that is still your fire stain, so you still really need to go back over and to buff it with the emery papers, to repolish it, just to remove those marks. Two other ways we can sort out this problem. We can electrostrip the place. We can electrostrip the piece, again by putting it into a solution, passing a current through, and it strips, it takes a layer off the item and deposits it onto, I can never remember, is it the cathode or anode? I really can never remember, but it actually physically strips the metal through an electro solution. That is one way. Then you would then go on to repolish the piece. Or you can electroplate the piece, which means you polish up the piece, you find that dreaded firescale, but you leave it there, and then you send the piece off then to be electroplated, and a layer of fine silver is put onto the piece. Once that layer has been put onto the piece, you cannot then polish it again, because you're effectively removing the layer that you've just put on, and you're going to reveal your fire stain again. So that is not an option. Also, you've got to think about is that, well, if you can't be bothered going through with the buff sticks, or you can't be bothered going through your bits of wet and dry paper, and you think, I'm just going to polish it off because I got some nice aggressive pre-polish, the polish will do a sufficient job. No, it won't, because the fire stain that is on that surface is harder than the silver that's around it, because it is full of copper. And the copper is harder than the silver. So even though you think, I'll polish it off, the polish will be polishing away the silver from around the area, and it'll just be brushing over and hardly wearing off that stain, the scale that is on the silver. So even though you may get that little bit of fire stain off the piece, you may find that the surface will be slightly undulating, because where there was no fire stain, the silver has been polished away. Right, let's just pop this into the acid here for a few minutes, and let's just see how it goes. And also, when you come to photograph your piece as well, you've got some nice bright lights on the piece, you've got a lovely reflective surface. I know the light box that we use here, any little bit of fire scale or fire stain on the piece, it shows a really, really dark cloud, like a purplish, cloudy grey on the silver. So you really do have to be careful when you're taking photographs if you've got a little bit of fire stain on the piece. Okay, let's take this piece out of the acid and let's have a look, see what the surface is like. So this is my bit of silver now. This is the area that we've been heating, and as you can see, it looks pretty good, it looks pretty nice, but even now you can just see some areas that are a little bit of a different color than to the rest of the silver. Right, let me just quickly polish this now without doing anything to it. Let me use a nice rouge mop here and see what happens when we polish it, because basically this is what you would do, is it comes out of the acid, you have a look at the piece, you've buffed it, you've cleaned it, and let's just quickly see what happens. Let's go over this middle area. Okay, so I think I've gone through that little bit of a top layer. And I think what also I'm going to do is try and just put the mop right in the center and keep that there for a little while, just to try and go through some of the silver, so just to see what's going to happen. Okay, so let's put that mop right in the center, round and round and round and round. All right, let's go over the whole piece now and give you a quick look at what I mean. Hopefully the cameras will be able to pick this up. Right, can you see? I just played the mop around in the center, and look, you can see what's happened is that we've taken away the fire stain from that center. Yeah, we can just about see it. All this around here now is grey. This little area here is clear, silver, bit of silver here. All this around here is firescale. There we go. You can just see in the camera. There we go. Good picture by there. So this area is where I was just playing that mop. It's gone through the layer, and all this layer here is now the firescale. It looks like the whole piece has been polished. If you look at it not under a bright light, you think, yeah, we got a nice polish. But when you really do look really closely, you'll find the area that is silver has got a much better shine, much better reflective surface than the rest of the piece. So what are we going to do? Elbow grease. Try and go over it with a mop. You may not even find you'd get rid of it all, especially if that layer was quite thick. I know I said if you polish, it would not necessarily wear it away. It will wear it away, but not at the same rate as the silver would wear it away. So yeah, I'm afraid elbow grease, back and forth. If I go back and forth in this one area here, you'll be able to see then the difference. So elbow grease. Once you've started buffing it, you won't be able to see it again, because it all tends to blend in. It only really comes apparent once you polish it. So I've gone over half the piece now, like that. I'm going to put a bit of a calico mop on here to get a bit of a pre-polish. So we'll pre-polish it. We'll try and get rid of the buff marks I just put on. Really quick. I should use a little bit finer wet and dry, but in a bit of a rush, obviously. So we've gone over with the calico mop. I'm going to wipe the piece off now, taking all that pre-polish off. Like that. Come across then with my rouge mop, and I can see this straight away. I can see it as plain as day. Let's do a nice bit of a rouge mop on it, a bit more of a polish. Okay, so you can see now how we use that little bit of elbow grease. We've got a bit more of that firescale off. We've got a little bit more off by here. But as you can see, I've got a little bit more work to do if I need to remove that firescale off in total. So you can see what we're looking at. You can see the grey cloud, nice and reflective here. This dark area around here is all the oxides. So that is all about firescale and firestain. Firescale, very, very fine layer up on the top. Happens usually when you anneal, pop it into the acid strips that little layer. Prolonged heating with the torch, too much oxygen, then you get the actual firestain that goes deeper into the silver. That's what you do to prevent it, and that's what you do to cure it. So prevention is better than a cure. You need to protect the surface. That's the best way. You're going to minimize the fire stain. Perhaps you never even prevent it completely, but you'll minimize it, and your cleaning up will be a lot better. Obviously, I'm working on a flat bit of silver. If you've got some shaped bit of silver, well, then you're going to have to use these little 3M wheels, or these little Scotch-Brite wheels, or the bristle brushes that we love to use here on At the Bench. And that's basically all about it. It's horrible stuff, but try and prevent it. It's better than cleaning up your piece afterwards. Don't forget, please, if you haven't subscribed already, please do. I'd love you to. Don't forget, smash the little bell icon by here. There we go, just by there, to be notified when films go live on our YouTube channel. Don't forget, please give this film a ding, a thumbs up if you like it, and please share it with your friends. It's something that firescale and firestain, it's a horrible word. Nobody wants it, but there are ways to stop you getting it. That's about it. Yep, my name's Andrew Berry for At the Bench's YouTube channel. Take care. I'll see you next time. Ta-da. If you've got it, I don't know, I can Oops, Daisy. We'll try and get put on if it wants. If it, oh, come on.